There is a kind of silence that few people ever notice. It isn't the silence of an empty room. It isn't the silence that follows an argument. It isn't even the silence of the night. It is the silence of a dream that has stopped asking to be remembered. Most people believe dreams die the day we fail. They imagine one devastating mistake, one rejection, one closed door, one moment that changes everything. But that isn't how most dreams disappear. They disappear quietly. They fade in the ordinary rhythm of everyday life, in postponed decisions, in unfinished conversations with ourselves, in promises whispered before sleep. I'll start next month, when I have more money, when life becomes less complicated, when I finally feel ready. At first, those promises seem harmless, responsible even. After all, waiting feels wiser than rushing. Preparing feels nobler than risking. And tomorrow always seems generous enough to hold whatever we couldn't do today. But tomorrow has a strange habit. It keeps moving. And while we are busy waiting for the perfect moment, life quietly becomes occupied by ordinary moments instead. Another Monday, another meeting, another birthday, another new year, another promise, until one day, without anyone announcing it, without any dramatic ending, the person who once dreamed with such certainty begins to wonder where that version of themselves went. Not because they failed, but because they waited. Perhaps that's the greatest misunderstanding about dreams. We think they disappear because the world is too difficult, because opportunities are unfair, because success belongs to someone else. Yet more often than not, dreams don't vanish because life says no. They vanish because we keep answering life with, "not yet." And there is a quiet tragedy in those two words, "not yet." Two simple words that have convinced countless people they were being patient, when in truth, they were slowly surrendering. The cruelest part is that waiting rarely feels dangerous. Failure hurts, rejection stings, loss leaves scars. But waiting wears the gentle face of reason. It tells you to prepare a little longer, to think a little more, to gather one more qualification, to save a little more money, to become just a little more confident. It never asks you to abandon your dream. It only asks you to postpone it, again and again, until postponement quietly becomes a lifestyle, until the extraordinary life you imagined is replaced by a life that simply feels familiar. Not terrible, not unbearable, just comfortable enough to stop asking difficult questions. And perhaps that is how the most meaningful parts of us begin to fade. Not with pain, but with comfort. Think back for a moment. Before the responsibilities, before the deadlines, before the expectations of the world settled on your shoulders, there was probably something that made your eyes light up. Maybe it was writing, maybe it was music, maybe it was building something with your own hands, maybe it was teaching, creating, exploring, leading, serving, or perhaps it wasn't a career at all. Perhaps it was simply the person you believed you would become. Children never ask whether they're qualified to dream. They don't calculate the odds before pretending to be explorers, artists, inventors, or astronauts. They don't wait until they feel confident enough to imagine impossible things. They simply begin. They draw, they sing, they build castles from sand, they fall, they laugh, and they begin again. Somewhere along the journey into adulthood, something changes. Without realizing it, we stop asking, "What if this works?" And we begin asking, "What if I fail?" Then, almost without noticing, fear changes its voice. It no longer shouts, it whispers, "Not today, maybe later." There's still plenty of time, and because the voice sounds calm, we trust it. We mistake hesitation for wisdom, delay for maturity, perfectionism for excellence, preparation for progress, but they are not the same. Preparing is valuable until preparation becomes a hiding place. Planning is necessary until planning becomes an excuse. Thinking is wise until thinking replaces doing. There comes a point when the safest place in the world becomes the most dangerous place for a dream. Because dreams were never meant to live inside our imagination forever. They were meant to be lived, even imperfectly, even clumsily, even afraid. Because a dream that begins imperfectly has far more life than a perfect dream that never leaves the heart. And perhaps, that is the quiet truth we spend most of our lives trying not to confront. There is something almost comforting about the word later. It doesn't reject you. It doesn't hurt you. It doesn't close the door in your face. It simply keeps the door open, just not now. And because of that, we learn to trust it. We learn to live beside it. We learn to build our lives around it. Later becomes a place we can always return to. A quiet promise that nothing is truly lost. But slowly, without announcement, later begins to change shape. At first, it feels harmless. I'll start later. I'll try later. I'll figure it out later. But later is never a fixed destination. It is always one step ahead of us. And every time we reach for it, it moves just slightly further away. Not enough to notice, not enough to panic, just enough to continue believing. That is how waiting survives. Not through fear, but through comfort. Because waiting rarely looks like waiting. It looks like preparation. It looks like responsibility. It looks like maturity. It looks like being realistic. And so we don't feel stuck. We feel sensible. We tell ourselves, I'm not giving up. I'm just getting ready. But there is a quiet danger in that sentence. Because preparation, when it has no end, becomes something else entirely. It becomes a safe place to hide from uncertainty. A place where dreams are allowed to exist without ever being tested by reality. And a dream that is never tested never risks failing, which means it also never risks living. Time, meanwhile, does not argue with us. It does not interrupt our planning. It does not correct our assumptions. It simply moves, quietly, relentlessly, without asking permission. And in that movement, something subtle begins to happen. We do not notice the moment when urgency fades. We do not notice when excitement becomes memory. We do not notice when the dream we once spoke about with energy becomes something we only mention in passing. If I ever get the time, one day, maybe. I used to think about that. That phrase alone carries something heavy. I used to. Not because the dream was impossible, but because life became full enough to make it feel optional. There is a strange illusion we begin to live under. We believe life becomes more stable as we grow older, more certain, more predictable. But what actually happens is quieter. Life becomes more occupied, and in that occupation, the space for beginnings slowly disappears. Not all at once, but piece by piece, until one day, we realize something unsettling. We are not waiting for the right time anymore. We are simply no longer noticing time at all. And yet the world continues to reward waiting. It praises patience. It celebrates planning. It admires those who are careful. So we learn to wear waiting like a badge of wisdom. We say, I don't rush things. I take my time. I want to do it properly. And sometimes that is true. But sometimes it is only a more acceptable way of saying, I'm afraid it might not work. Because fear rarely announces itself as fear. It arrives disguised, as logic, as caution, as experience, as advice from people who once had dreams too. And so the waiting continues, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly in the background of everyday life, until one day, something almost unnoticeable happens. You think about the dream less, not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped reaching for it. And what we do not reach for slowly begins to feel distant, not gone, just far away, like something that belongs to another version of us, a version we still recognize, but no longer visit. And this is where the real shift happens. Not when we give up, but when we adjust. When we begin to say, maybe it was never that important. Maybe I was just being unrealistic. Maybe I'm better off as I am. These are not words of failure. They are words of adaptation, the mind's way of protecting us from disappointment. But in doing so, it quietly helps us forget what we once wanted deeply enough to feel alive. Because dreams don't only die from rejection, they die from redefinition, from being reshaped into something smaller, something safer, something easier to live with, until one day, they no longer resemble what they once were, and we convince ourselves that nothing was lost. We simply moved on. But deep down, there is always a moment, a small, quiet moment, when you remember, not the full dream, but the feeling of it. And in that moment, you realize something uncomfortable. It was never the world that stopped you. It was the waiting. There comes a moment in every life when waiting stops feeling harmless. It doesn't arrive with warning. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It comes quietly, often in the middle of an ordinary day, while doing something routine, something forgettable, something that should not carry meaning at all. And yet it does, because suddenly you remember, not everything, not the full dream, just the feeling of it, the version of you that once believed it was possible. And for a brief moment, everything becomes still. It is not regret that hurts the most. It is recognition, the realization that nothing actually stopped you. No door slammed shut. No opportunity was taken away. No final moment of failure occurred. You were simply not there, not absent in body, but absent in decision, absent in beginning. And in that silence, a difficult truth begins to surface. You were not waiting for life. Life was happening while you were waiting. Waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel certain, waiting for conditions that were never guaranteed to arrive. And slowly, without noticing, you began to live as though time was something you could negotiate with, something that would always extend itself one more year, one more season, one more chance. But time never agreed to those terms. It only continued forward, quietly, without resistance, without pause. This is where most people misunderstand their own story. They believe they still have time because nothing has visibly ended. But life does not end your dreams for you. It simply fills the space where they were supposed to grow. Responsibility, routine, comfort, expectation. Days that look similar enough to stop asking questions. And in that repetition, urgency fades, not because the dream was false, but because it was never given movement. And then one day, you look back, not with dramatic sorrow, but with quiet distance, and you realize something strange. The person who once dreamed so clearly feels almost like someone you read about, not a stranger, but no longer fully reachable. And you begin to understand that waiting does not destroy dreams instantly. It slowly changes the person who carries them until they no longer recognize what they are carrying. But even here, in this realization, there is something important that still remains. Because the fact that you can see it now means it is not entirely lost. It is just unfinished. And unfinished things still hold possibility. This is the part of the story where most people expect motivation, a sudden shift, a dramatic transformation, a declaration that everything will change immediately. But real change is quieter than that. It does not begin with certainty. It begins with awareness, with honesty, with the uncomfortable understanding that waiting was never protection. It was delay disguised as safety. And so the question is no longer, is it too late? The question becomes, what am I still postponing that is quietly waiting for me to begin? Because the truth is, nothing external was ever required for the first step. Not perfect timing, not perfect confidence, not perfect clarity, only movement, imperfect, uncertain, but real. You may not be able to recover every moment that passed, but you are still here, still aware, still able to choose differently from this point forward. And that is where something shifts. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. Because the moment you stop negotiating with later, you return to something you had all along. Now. And now is the only place where anything ever begins. Not in the version of you that had more time. Not in the version of you that had fewer fears. But in the version of you that exists right here. Reading this, recognizing something, and quietly realizing that waiting was never the life you wanted. It was only the space between you and it. So maybe the story was never about dreams dying at all. Maybe it was about something simpler, something more honest, that the life you were waiting for was always waiting for you to begin it. And if there is one truth left to carry forward, let it be this. Most dreams don't die from failure, they die from waiting. But not today, not from this moment onward, because the only thing that was ever missing was the beginning.